first rule of Fight Club is, you do not talk about Fight Club.
The first rule of Fight Club is not to talk about it. But how do you ignore a film that no one expected to succeed, yet became one of the most talked about movies of its time? In 1999, Fight Club transformed Chuck Palahniuk's 1996 novel into a dark, unforgettable story of identity, chaos, and control. However, behind its brutal scenes and twisted plot lies a series of strange decisions, overlooked facts, and blurred truths. What really happened behind the scenes? What parts were planned and which were pure chance? Here are 20 facts, but be warned, not everything is what it seems. Number 20. Marla Singer's infamous pillow talk line. In 1999 film Fight Club, Marla Singer, played by Helena Bonham Carter, says a line that drew lasting attention. During a bedroom scene, she delivers the sentence, "I've not been fucked like that since grade school." The line, although often quoted, was not what the script first called for. Director David Fincher had originally written a different line taken from Chuck Palahniuk's novel. The line was, "I want to have your abortion." When Laura Ziskin, president of 20th Century Fox at the time, read the script, she objected to the sentence. She said it was too offensive and asked that it be removed. Fincher agreed, but he set a condition. He told Ziskin he would write one replacement and that she could not ask him to change it again. She accepted. Fincher then created the line that appears in the final version. When Ziskin heard the new line, she was alarmed but kept her word. The scene remained unchanged. The choice of words matched Marla's character, whose behavior and speech reflected a sense of damage and disregard. The line was received with mixed reactions. Some saw it as too direct, others pointed to it as a sharp detail that fit the tone of the film. The story behind the change remained part of the film's production history. It showed how a decision made under pressure shaped one of the film's most memorable moments. The agreement between Fincher and Ziskin remained unchanged after that. The words were kept as filmed. Number 19. The production caused problems with locals. The Fight Club production was large and demanding. More than 200 locations were used, along with studio spaces. This broad reach brought the crew into contact with several neighborhoods, and not all the reactions were friendly. One of the central locations was the Paper Street house. The exterior of the house was not a real home. It was built from the ground up on an empty plot in Wilmington, California. At first, it appeared to be a new building. The design team then weathered the surface, adding signs of neglect and age to fit the story's tone. Once filming finished, the structure was torn down and the lot was cleared again. During one of the night shoots at that location, director of photography Jeff Cronenweth employed a lighting setup that involved helium balloons. These balloons held lights that floated above the house, casting the kind of glow he needed for the scene. Residents nearby, seeing unusual lights moving in the sky, reported what they believed were unidentified flying objects. Enough calls came in that the local sheriff's department arrived to investigate. They left once the source was explained. At another location, not everyone was as patient. One resident became upset by the presence of the production crew. During the shoot, he threw a glass beer bottle, 40 ounces in size, at Cronenweth's head. The bottle struck him, leaving a visible wound. Police were called again. This time, the person responsible was taken into custody. Number 18. Marla Singer makeup. For her role as Marla Singer in Fight Club, Helena Bonham Carter made an explicit request to the makeup department. She asked that all of Marla's makeup be applied using the artist's left hand. This was not a technical requirement, but a creative one. Carter believed that Marla would not care about precision or style in her appearance. The choice was meant to reflect how Marla navigated the world, without structure or concern for how others perceived her. The result was makeup that looked uneven. Eyeliner was smudged. Lipstick was not carefully applied. There were no sharp lines or smooth edges. The left-handed application allowed these details to appear without forcing them. Carter's direction helped define how the character looked on screen. It portrayed Marla as someone who did not meet outside standards. She wore what she wanted, spoke how she liked, and moved as she pleased. The makeup became part of that picture. This decision was not significant in terms of cost or effort, but it helped shape how viewers perceived the character. The makeup did not stand out on its own, but it worked well with her words, clothes, and posture. All of it came together to support the role. Carter stayed close to the choices she made for Marla. The makeup remained an integral part of her method, silent yet present in every frame. Number 17. Brad Pitt punch scene. In Fight Club, there is a scene where the narrator, played by Edward Norton, punches Tyler Durden, played by Brad Pitt, for the first time. What happened during the filming of that scene was not fully scripted. Director David Fincher wanted the moment to feel real. At first, Norton was told to throw a staged punch, one that would look convincing without causing harm. But before the cameras captured the scene, Fincher quietly spoke to Norton and told him to hit Pitt for real. Pitt was not aware of the change. When Norton's punch landed on his ear, the reaction that followed was not acting. Pitt winced and stumbled. That moment was captured on camera and used in the finished film. The decision to allow a real punch was not announced to the crew. It happened without warning. The footage remained as it was, without retakes or corrections. This unscripted part of the scene gave it a different kind of energy. The punch did not come from a choreographed fight, but from an honest reaction. It matched the film's mood, which often stepped outside usual limits to show pain, anger, and control. Fincher's choice did not draw attention to itself at the time, but the result stayed in the final cut. What the audience saw was not planned down to the last detail. It was shaped in part by surprise and by how each actor responded to something unexpected. Number 16. The car destruction scene. During the early writing discussions, Brad Pitt and Edward Norton discovered a shared dislike for a product they believed misrepresented the spirit of a past generation. The redesigned Volkswagen Beetle, launched in the year 1997, had been introduced with great fanfare. It was marketed as a tribute to the car that once symbolized the youth movement of the 1960s. But to Pitt and Norton, this modern version was not a tribute. It was a product shaped by those who had once stood against commercialism, now using their own memories to sell something new. They saw it as a repackaged version of the past, something real turned into something for sale. That feeling did not stay in the room where they talked. It followed them onto the set. When the script called for a scene where the characters Tyler and Jack destroy parked cars with baseball bats, Pitt and Norton made a request. They asked that one of the cars be a new Volkswagen Beetle. The crew made sure it was there. The destruction of the Beetle was not just part of the story. It was something personal to the two actors. When the bats struck the car, their movements were not only part of the performance, they were a response to an idea they had already discussed. The act did not need extra meaning spoken out loud. It was already present in their shared understanding. The Beetle, surrounded by other wrecked vehicles, stood for something they felt. A product once tied to protest had returned, now promoted with a shine and a logo. Its placement in the scene gave the film another layer. It showed how things once meant to break from the norm could return as part of what the film was questioning. Later on the commentary track, Norton spoke about the scene and their reasons for including the car. Shortly after that, Pitt admitted that with time, his opinion of the car had changed. He had come to see it differently, calling it a strong revision of an earlier design. But at the time of filming, the choice was clear and deliberate. The car appears only briefly, and no attention is drawn to it in the dialogue. Yet for those who knew what it represented, its destruction said enough. Number 15. The movie's premiere was polarizing. Fight Club premiered in 1999 at the Venice Film Festival. The festival, renowned for showcasing films from around the world, became the first venue where a full-length movie was screened for an audience. The screening brought contradictory opinions. Some viewers responded with discomfort. Others remained engaged with the story's direction and style. During the screening, a moment came that pushed one viewer beyond the point of staying seated. The festival's director left the theater after hearing a line spoken by the character Marla Singer. The line, which was left unchanged in the film, caused an immediate reaction. It was not censored for the festival. Writer Brian Raftery later described the event in his book, Best Movie Year Ever. According to the account, while many in the room remained silent or unsettled, two voices could be heard laughing. Brad Pitt and Edward Norton, who played Tyler Durden and the narrator, were seated on the balcony. Their laughter continued through several scenes. The amusement they showed was not shared by most of the audience. Pitt later said that he and Norton still believed in the film. He told Norton it would be the best movie they would ever make. The audience did not give a standing ovation at the end. However, the actors' support for the film remained unwavering. The Venice premiere showed how far the film was from being universally accepted. The sharp reactions began there. Later, those same elements that caused people to walk out became part of what gave the film its long-standing presence. The response did not change the movie. It marked the beginning of its course. Number 14. Dedication to the DVD experience helped build the movie's cult. At the turn of the millennium, DVDs were still gaining ground. Director David Fincher supported the format fully for the release of Fight Club on home media. From the outset, two versions were made available. One was the standard release of the film. The other was a special edition that included additional material. Even the basic edition came with 4 separate commentary tracks. The special edition included all of those tracks, along with deleted scenes, music videos, trailers, and publicity content. It also featured behind-the-scenes material. The work that went into the DVD was noted by critics who followed changes in film distribution. The Online Film Critics Society gave it 2 awards: Best DVD and Best Special Features. In 2001, Entertainment Weekly placed Fight Club first on its list of 50 essential DVDs. That same release went on to sell more than 6 million copies in its first 10 years. The disc became known not just for the film itself, but also for what it offered to those interested in the filmmaking process. It remained one of the most studied and rewatched home releases of its time. Number 13. The movie was a box office flop. Fight Club had a wide release backed by a major studio. 20th Century Fox financed the film, and the production budget was $63 million. The cast included 2 well-known actors, Brad Pitt and Edward Norton. Despite that, the film did not meet the studio's expectations at the box office. It opened in the United States as the #1 film during its first weekend. However, by the second weekend, ticket sales dropped by 42%. That decline continued over the weeks that followed. By the time the film concluded its theatrical run, it had earned just over $100 million worldwide. While this amount exceeded the production budget, it was not considered a strong return for a film of that scale. The film received no major awards. It did not receive recognition from leading institutions during that season. The response at the time was divided. Studio executives, critics, and audiences had mixed views about the content and tone. Number 12. An unexpected choice was considered for the screenwriter. The first writer considered for the Fight Club screenplay was Buck Henry, who was born in 1930. He had already built a long career in film and television. He co-created the sitcom Get Smart with Mel Brooks. He was also known for hosting Saturday Night Live during its early years. One of his most recognized works was the screenplay for The Graduate, released in 1967. Producer Laura Ziskin saw a connection between The Graduate and Fight Club. Both dealt with men in conflict with their surroundings, and she believed Henry could bring that tone to the project. For that reason, he was one of the first people approached. Ultimately, the screenplay was written by Jim Uhls. He brought a different rhythm to the adaptation. Still, Buck Henry remained active during that time. In 1995, he wrote the screenplay for To Die For, a crime story set in suburban America. The early interest in Henry shows how the project's direction shifted before production began. His style would have shaped the film differently, but the final version moved forward with a different voice behind the script. Number 11. Elaine Beans could have been Marla. Several actresses were considered for the role of Marla Singer in Fight Club. Among them were Janie Ann Garofalo and Courtney Love, who was in a relationship with Edward Norton at the time. Director David Fincher also reached out to Julia Louis-Dreyfus while she was nearing the end of her time on the television series Seinfeld. Fincher later recalled their meeting in an interview with Total Film. Despite having directed The Game in 7, he felt she did not recognize him or his work. He said that during the conversation, he sensed a distance from her, as though she had no idea who he was. Reflecting on that moment, he said he thought to himself, "My God, you are such a fucking loser." Although Louis-Dreyfus did not take the role, the part of Marla eventually went to Helena Bonham Carter. The casting process involved several changes and considerations before the final decision was made. Number 10. Almost every shot of the movie has a Starbucks cup. David Fincher included a Starbucks cup in nearly every scene of Fight Club. This choice echoed an earlier tribute he used in The Game, where he placed a can of haggis in several scenes to honor his cinematographer Harris Haggis Savides. In Fight Club, the coffee cups served as a subtle detail woven throughout the film's background. Viewers began to take notice. One Tumblr page titled Fight Club Starbucks carefully documented each appearance of the cups across the film's scenes. The pattern continued until the final sequence. At the end of the film, when a building collapses, a large globe crashes into a storefront. Instead of Starbucks, the name of the shop is Gratifico Coffee. Starbucks had allowed the use of their cups throughout the film, but they requested that none of their branded locations be destroyed on screen. The name change was used to respect that request while still delivering the intended visual moment. Number 9. Rosie O'Donnell decided to ruin the movie for everyone. 1 week before Fight Club was released in theaters across the United States, Rosie O'Donnell attended a private screening of the film. She reacted strongly to what she had seen. On her television talk show, which aired the Friday of the film's release, she told her viewers that the movie had deeply unsettled her and that she had been unable to sleep since watching it. During the broadcast, O'Donnell went further. She revealed the film's final twist to her audience on air and then told them not to see it. Her decision to disclose the ending without warning was unexpected. Maybe it is one of the reasons the movie was not a massive box office success. This incident was later discussed by Edward Norton, Brad Pitt, and director David Fincher in the film's DVD commentary. They recalled the moment. Pitt referred to what O'Donnell had done as unforgivable, pointing to how the surprise ending had been a central part of the film's structure. The event remains one of the more widely remembered controversies surrounding the movie's release. Number 8. Some took the movie as a death knell for traditional masculinity. Some viewers believed the film was declaring the end of traditional masculinity. They saw it as a message that men were no longer needed and that the modern world had become more suited to women. Edward Norton responded to this interpretation during a conversation with Lynn Hirschberg. He said it seemed too narrow. In his words, it was not a clear statement, but rather a close look at why some men might feel frustrated. Brad Pitt also spoke about the subject. He acknowledged that society had moved into a time where open anger and physical fights were no longer acceptable. He said that this might be a more developed way to live, but that people could not just leap to that place without first going through earlier experiences. He explained that physical fights in youth were once considered a regular part of growing up. To him, these were not always dangerous, but instead part of learning. He felt the film was pointing out that the desire to settle arguments through physical action had not simply disappeared. Number 7. The towers they blow up were based on real buildings. The final scene, where the buildings collapse, was not filmed in front of an actual city skyline. Edward Norton and Helena Bonham Carter stood on a set with a large glass wall behind them. The view through the glass was created using computer effects, combining images of 10 different buildings found in downtown Los Angeles and Century City. In the well-known shot where Jack and Marla hold hands, the twin Century Plaza towers appear in the middle of the frame. These are the last buildings to fall. The St. Regis Hotel is visible on the right, and the Fox Plaza Tower is visible in the foreground on the left. In real life, these buildings are located far apart. The Fox Plaza Tower had also served as Nakatomi Plaza in Die Hard. The Fox company owned all the buildings shown in the background at that time. The reason for using them was not to send a message, but to avoid legal issues. If they had used images of buildings owned by other companies, it could have led to lawsuits, especially since the buildings were being shown collapsing. The final shot took over a year to complete. The effects team worked frame by frame to animate the scene. They created 4 million pieces of glass that fell from the windows. Each shard was individually animated. David Fincher recalled how the process had become increasingly strange. During progress meetings, he found himself saying things like, "Building number 3 is going to go down easily." He said it in a way that made him wonder if someone might report the conversation to the authorities. Number 6. Brad Pitt didn't chip his tooth for the film. One story that still gets repeated about Fight Club is that Brad Pitt had a tooth, or sometimes more than one, chipped on purpose to play the role of Tyler Durden. Several websites carried the story, and some even included a quote from his publicist to support it. The truth is quieter. Pitt did not have a healthy tooth broken for the role. His tooth had already been chipped before filming began. Years earlier, it had been capped. For Fight Club, he chose to have the cap removed so the damaged tooth would be visible. It was not about creating a new injury, but about showing something tangible that was already there. He thought it suited the character. This was not the first time Pitt made that choice. In 1993, for California, he played a character named Early Grace, a man with a violent and erratic nature. For that role, he had also removed the cap from the same chipped tooth. The film was directed by Dominic Sena, who had worked in music videos before turning to feature films, much like David Fincher. After filming California, Pitt's cap had to be replaced. Fox covered the cost of the dental work, but with a specific request. The studio asked that he appear shirtless in at least 2 scenes. He agreed. In Fight Club, he appears shirtless in many scenes. Whether planned or not, the studio's investment was more than fulfilled. The tooth was never chipped for the film. It was simply revealed again. Number 5. The fight behind the novel. Chuck Palahniuk's novel Fight Club, which was later made into a film in 1999, came from something he experienced during a camping trip. During that trip, he got into an argument with a group of people who were making noise. The argument turned into a physical fight. Palahniuk was beaten badly. His face was left swollen and bruised. When he returned to work the next day, his injuries were plain to see, but none of his co-workers said anything about them. No one asked what had happened. They avoided the subject and acted as if everything was normal. This silence stayed with him. He took it as a sign that people did not want to get involved, even when something was wrong. That feeling of being ignored became the starting point for Fight Club. The book tells the story of a man who feels numb and cut off from others. He turns to fighting as a way to feel something real. Through violence, he finds a form of release. The story grew from Palahniuk's thought that people often avoid the truth, even when it is right in front of them. The book was published in 1996. The main character, who remains unnamed, lives in a world that appears to be governed by strict rules but lacks genuine meaning. Palahniuk drew on his own experiences to shape that world. His story became known for showing how some people deal with emptiness, not by talking, but by breaking things. The fight in the woods did not just leave marks on his face, it also left a lasting impact. It gave him the idea for a story that reached millions. Number 4. All the guys had a hand in the script. Jim Ewells received sole credit for the Fight Club screenplay, but he was not the only writer involved during its development. As the project entered its advanced stages, director David Fincher, along with Edward Norton and Brad Pitt, made repeated visits to Andrew Kevin Walker, the screenwriter of Fincher's earlier film Seven. Walker gave input during these sessions, offering uncredited changes to the script. He later described his contribution modestly, saying that Ewells had built an amazing chair and that his role had been limited to smoothing edges and attaching floor pads. The Writers Guild of America has strict rules regarding credit. Because Walker's revisions were uncredited, no acknowledgement of his involvement could appear in the film. As a small tribute, Fincher named the 3 detectives seen in the final portion of the movie after Walker. Despite the official limits, these meetings were serious and focused. The 4 men, Fincher, Norton, Pitt, and Walker, gathered at Pitt's home or nearby office spaces. They worked through the script in detail, engaging in lengthy discussions over dialogue, tone, and meaning. They pulled scenes apart, studied the lines, and made decisions based on what sounded real or what felt forced. Their shared efforts gave rise to a speech they nicknamed the Mammoth Rant. This section of the film, based on Palahniuk's source material and influenced by David Mamet's writing style, reflected their deeper conversations on identity and male anger. It was shaped not by one person, but by 4 minds working in rhythm over time. Number 3. The protagonist's name is confusing. Edward Norton's character in Fight Club is never given a real name. In the film's credits, he is listed simply as narrator. This is how director David Fincher is most commonly referred to. During the self-help group scenes, the character uses several pseudonyms, including Cornelius and Rupert. Many viewers began calling the character Jack, based on a series of monologues in which he reads from old magazine articles such as "I am Jack's colon" and "I am Jack's raging bile duct," and so on.
I am Jack's colon.
I am Jack's raging bile duct.
To some, this interpretation seemed shallow, missing the irony of those lines. Still, there was some truth to the assumption. In the official shooting script, the character is identified as Jack. This was likely done to avoid confusion during the filming and editing process. The lines Norton reads were inspired by real pamphlets once published in Reader's Digest, which used phrases like, "I am Joe's colon." Chuck Palahniuk's original novel preserved the Joe version. However, when the time came to shoot the film, Reader's Digest denied permission to use their material. They did not want their brand associated with Fight Club. As a result, Norton returned to the studio to re-record parts of the narration. Every mention of Joe was replaced with Jack, which matched the temporary name already used in the script. To Marla Singer and the members of Project Mayhem, Norton's character is known as Tyler Durden. Plane tickets are booked under that name. Whether this means he once had the name Tyler Durden, or if that identity was taken from him, remains unclear. In the end, the man known only as narrator is left without a fixed name, as lost in identity as the people who follow him. Number 2. Pitt kind of worked with DiCaprio on the film. Although the film Once Upon a Time in Hollywood from 2019 marked the first time Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio acted alongside each other on screen, it was not the first time they appeared in the same film, at least not directly. In the early part of Fight Club, the narrator enters a meditative cave during a guided session. He first sees a penguin, which he believes is his power animal, and later imagines Marla taking the penguin's place. In these scenes, visible breath clouds swirl in the cold air around them. The cave appears frozen with icy walls and heavy air, but the breath was not real. It was added later using computer graphics. Blue Sky Studios worked on parts of Fight Club's visual effects. They had connections to VFX, the company responsible for similar effects on Titanic, a film released by 20th Century Fox in 1997. VFX had built a library of digital breath effects while working on the cold scenes in Titanic. This library became a shared resource for later productions. John Sitzowitz, a digital artist on Fight Club, explained the process. He said they began with those earlier breath elements, cut and layered them, and adjusted the movement to match the wind within the cave. Since the actors and camera were often moving, each breath had to be placed frame by frame, with attention to where it should begin. Once the breath effects were in place, the entire scene gave off the feeling that the temperature had dropped far below freezing. The breath in those scenes was not Edward Norton's. It was repurposed material from another film, carefully shaped to fit the world of Fight Club. Number 1. The stars learned to fight and to make soap. Brad Pitt and Edward Norton trained in boxing and martial arts in preparation for Fight Club, which included several bare-knuckle fights between their characters. But physical combat was not the only skill they studied for the film. Soap making, a central part of Tyler Durden's underground trade, was also included in their preparation. Both actors spent time learning how soap is made, using real materials and observing the process closely. The goal was to make the scenes involving soap appear believable and grounded. Their hands-on training helped them carry out each step on screen with the proper movement and confidence, avoiding any gesture that might seem unsure or artificial. Brad Pitt had already chosen to remove the cap from a chipped tooth to reflect Tyler's physical imperfections better. Learning soap making was another part of his effort to match the role. The work behind the scenes was steady and deliberate. Each task contributed to the larger effort of creating a film that looked and felt authentic. Some movies are masterpieces, while others are cult classics. Cult classic films are unique in the cinematic landscape, cherished by a dedicated fan base that often transcends generations. And Fight Club is a prime example. Which of the weird facts is a surprise to you? Let's hear from you in the comments. Thank you for watching. Kindly tab the subscription and notification buttons for more content from us.